Okay, this is you from Israel and the Galilee, 4th of December 2024. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning. No rain, it'll be in the 60s, cold at night. I'm going to go into the live stream and make sure we got sound and picture. I'm not going to put any posts up. Right. Um, we got sound and picture. I'm going to do some praise. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Okay, getting warm in here. All right. So there's a lot going on now, and some of it is rather serious, I guess, for lack of a better word. I don't know. And we'll go through some of these uh, things that are going on. As most of you know, I don't really cover the Ukraine Russia war in great detail. I really haven't seen anything substantially different going on. Ukraine wins, Russia wins, they go back and forth destroying each other. NATO keeps giving them weapons, America as well. Standard operating procedure. South Korea, they ended the martial law and they're talking about getting rid of the president. Excuse me. Impeaching him, we'll see what happens. They may or they may not. It's not going to change the world. And one of their top military leaders is resigning based on what happened. And, we'll see how this develops. Right now, it's just general turmoil, and another one bites the dust. And in speaking of biting the dust, in France, the president, no, the prime minister got booted on a vote of no confidence. Another one bites the dust. Macron, the idiot, is still in charge as the president, which is higher than the prime minister. The prime minister in France gets appointed by the president, so Macron's going to appoint a new one. And the guy generally deals with the day-to-day domestic policies, budget, and roads, sewer, oil, water, day to day. Doesn't get involved in international nor defense. Okay, so it's not that breathtaking, but it shows turmoil. Okay. Netanyahu in Israel. Now, this is probably not known to most people around the world. The background is he has 3 criminal cases against him for corruption that have been open for years. 4 years probably, and 3 years anyway, and he keeps postponing it because of the war, being the prime minister. It may only be 2 years, but it's been a long time. It could be 3. And the criminal cases are, 2 of them are pretty strong. All 3, one gives them 10 years in jail max. The other 2 charges 3 years max. That's 16 years. Now, Netanyahu, just to give you a perspective, we bought some submarines from Germany through Netanyahu, and his cousin was a lawyer who doesn't live in Israel. Negotiated the deal, and they found out that he got a $25 million fee from the German government, and that had to get returned. It was a big scandal. So why would a lawyer that doesn't live in Israel negotiate a submarine deal for Israel, who happens to be Netanyahu's cousin, and receive a $25 million fee of some sort from the German submarine company? It's, that's not one of his criminal cases, though, surprisingly. So that gives you an understanding, okay? The Attorney General is now calling for Netanyahu's criminal detention, like lock him up, based on him not wanting to, I guess it has to do directly or indirectly, him not wanting to cooperate with the proceeding of his criminal cases. When this started, if some of you remember, I told you Netanyahu would throw the country into war so they don't remove him. The Israelis, in my opinion, incorrectly believe that you don't change an administration during wartime. It's dangerous because the Muslim terrorist enemies surrounding us would imagine that to be a sign of weakness, and wars could increase or light up when new ones start. I don't think it justifies taking a guy like this. A lot of people think he's dragging wars out. What do I think? It's hard to really say. He also failed to conduct an independent investigation of October 7th, which I personally, in my opinion, believe was allowed to happen. And I think it worked out with Biden, and it's about getting Iran. Now, the fact that he's failing to do a independent criminal investigation is, when the High Court wanted him to, ordered him to, I believe, yes, is very questionable, you have to admit. He also has failed to draft the ultra-Orthodox. And one of the ultra-Orthodox rabbis was saying, a big shot somewhere in Israel, I believe, was saying now is the time for all the Jews to emigrate to Israel. Well, he's right, but it's not immediately the time soon, will happen. And that, of course, would relieve the pressure on the ultra-Orthodox having to go in the military, because if they picked up even as little as 1 million or 2 million more Jews, it would take the load off. Why would they have to go in the draft? But many Israelis just feel offended by them saying they don't want to go in the draft. Half of Israel is secular, and this business of them going to the yeshivas and praying for Israel is more important than going in the draft is completely absurd to the secular Israelis. And Netanyahu, to keep his coalition together with 15 votes from United Torah Judaism and Shah's party combined, is vital to him keeping his coalition together. Okay, so he is not going to draft them, although the courts ordered it. It's never been enforced. They sent draft notices out, and I don't know, a few hundred or something went in, and the rest of them ignored it, and no action was taken. So the ultra-Orthodox are hanging on to Netanyahu, even though he's perverting the democracy, because it's in their best interest. Plus, Netanyahu gave them a small fortune of extra funding. So not only do they not go in the army, they want the rest of Israel to support them. People don't like that here. Okay. They keep themselves away from Israelis and that are not ultra orthodox. They think that we're I don't know, apostates. Some of them will say you are historically Israel or Jewish, but you're not because you don't do the Talmud, which is not the Bible. It contradicts the Bible. So you've got that going on. You've got the ultra Orthodox Party, which has a bunch of votes, enough to take Netanyahu down, which is Bezalel Smotrich and Ben Gvir, and they want a complete victory with Hamas, and I'll explain what else they want in a minute, and Hezbollah. So they're what you would call in America ultra right wing. Okay. They don't like churches and they don't like messianics, and they would probably prosecute them if they had control of the government and run that Israel. Okay. Now, they're saying in the press here that if Netanyahu does get detained, there'll be a civil war in Israel. See, Netanyahu wants to get rid of the democracy, and not in those words, but he wants to undermine the power of the Supreme Court tremendously so they can't interfere with him. And his real goal is to get the Knesset to pass a law they call the French law, which is just a reference point, it's not official or anything, which means that a prime minister cannot get prosecuted for anything, no civil, no criminal, no depositions, no subpoenas, no nothing. But while he's prime minister and for anything that he did while prime minister. So if that passes, and he can get it retroactive, I guess, or whatever it means, or I don't know how it's going to work with retroactivity, but basically it means that he is scot-free. People in Israel don't want to see this. They don't want to see the end of the Supreme Court. Human rights would fly out the window with Netanyahu. There is no constitution in Israel. The courts are all judge, no jury. I never heard of a jury in Israel for anything civil or criminal. I don't think they have to appoint a lawyer for you if you get arrested. They can detain people without charging them, but that has to be done through the military for national security. It's rarely done, but it could be upgraded if Netanyahu wanted it and there was no Supreme Court. The Attorney General there were threats on this person's life, and this fear with her getting knocked off. But I would not say it was Netanyahu. I don't know what it is. I don't follow that much. The Supreme Court knows Netanyahu wants to, not necessarily get rid of them, but wants to downgrade their power so he can run. In a democracy like Israel, the Israel so-called democracy, without jury trials, without if you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you, and all this stuff. If the police want to go in, they don't have to get a search warrant. Okay? The police generally leave the people of Israel alone. But they do nasty things. The law allows for nasty things like extremely punitive fines for talking on a phone. But I think you got to hold the phone. I think if you hang the phone on the dashboard and you just talk, they don't care. Once we got a ticket, it was a parking ticket that was not paid because it wasn't us. It took place in a city we never went in. Okay, and it was a lot of money. It was about $450. So a while ago, quite a while ago. And we just paid it because what were we going to do? Get a lawyer and go fight it? Probably would have got off. The lawyer probably would have cost $2,000 or $3,000. See what they do? We saw once in Tiberias, one of the parking meter guys was going around giving people tickets, and he had no right giving him a ticket. I don't know if he was sick or on medicine or something. He gave 6 or 8 people tickets, and what are you going to do about it? You know, go to court. You know, these cheap tickets. You know, I don't know, $20, $30. You know, and this is stuff that goes on. People don't like it. He also hates civilians having guns. Why? He's fearful. What do you think? The cause for gun control is the government doesn't want to have to deal with their own population because they know all the bad things they do and they're afraid they'll get exposed and they don't want to have the revolution. That's the only reason that gun control makes any sense. It's been proven inside and out, up and down, it stops crime. With all the wars, what a good president or prime minister of Israel would have done is taken the surplus weapons that the military has and issued them with perhaps 100 rounds of ammo to every Jew in Israel that was a citizen. Now, it could still belong to the government and they could ask you to return it, you can't sell it, this type of thing. When someone gets a pistol permit, they're allowed to buy 200 rounds of ammo for the life of the gun. You understand this? That's it. When you get the gun, you can buy 200 rounds of bullets, and that's all you could ever buy for that gun. That's it, and you're only going to really get one gun on your permit. Unless you're some high-ranking government official or there's corruption on it. So, in America, you could have a 45, you could have a 380, a 9mm, a 22, a 25, a shotgun, a rifle. There are no, high caliber hunting rifles you're going to get in Israel. I've never seen anybody other than military police with a shotgun. This is what he does, right? And, we're not in a high crime area. We're in an extremely insane terrorist environment. It's above and beyond high crime. It's 10 times worse, and he doesn't want us to have guns. You see what's wrong with this guy? A lot. Okay? I call him a guy loosely, so you know what I mean. And he is a really, what he's doing is he's trying to make it look like he's winning the wars. But what did we win? We stopped Hamas, we stopped Hezbollah. Okay. They're still in Gaza and they're still in Lebanon. You see the problem? Now we got Syria, so Hezbollah dropped off, now we got Syria. Israel's involved in the war in Syria deeply, let me tell you. What happened with the war is we defeated Hezbollah. Hezbollah has a large number of people in Syria and probably Iraq for that matter. And we were repeatedly bombing weapons depots, missiles, things like that in Hezbollah, targeted assassinations and so forth. So Hezbollah was significantly weakened by Israel. Russia was bogged down in the war with Ukraine. And Iran has been humiliated by Israel. We know they have no radar to guide their missiles, and they have no radar or air-to-ground or ground-to-air systems to protect them from missiles, drones, planes, and so forth. So they're humiliated. Okay? They don't have Hamas, they don't have Hezbollah, and they're in the process of losing Syria. So the rebels saw this as a golden opportunity, and I'm sure they were being counseled by America, Turkey, and Israel, who are getting help to some levels, for sure. They just surrounded a city in Syria called Hama, Hama, on three sides. The Bashar Assad regular Syrian Arab army deserted, and they left a lot of equipment behind. But back to Netanyahu. Um, so they're trying to get him detained. He doesn't do what he's supposed to do. Okay, a lot of people that have been in the military in Israel, I'm talking you must be in the 2 million range or 1 million anyway, know that what happened on October 7th was not just a relaxation or something, it was too insane. And there's been numerous reports that we were informed this big attack was coming. So there's no conducting of an independent investigation because he knows where that's going to take him. He's not drafting the ultra orthodox. There's many things he's not doing. He's trying to end the democracy, as they call it here. You know, it's rather stupid. A lot of people in Israel want a constitution. Okay, the police and the Shin Bet, that's like our FBI sort of kind of, and the military people have tremendous power, but they don't use it. Everybody's a Jew and an Israeli, and they leave people alone. You've got to go out of your way and create problems. They're very lax on criminal. I mean, if some criminal starts hurting people, yeah, they'll get involved. But crimes against property, they're pretty hard to get them to do anything. I mean, they're not. I mean, if somebody, hit you in the head with a club or stabbed you or shot you, they get all into gear. But, that's. But if something happened with something in your house was stolen or a car or something like that, you pretty much need to have a video of it being stolen for them to kick into gear. They don't do much about that kind of stuff. This constant attacks on people with SMS messages, trying to get fraud on people, calling them on phones, trying to get information to get into their accounts. I never hear about them getting prosecuted. I mean, about 2, 3 years ago, the Knesset was considering a bill to raise the limit you could import goods into Israel without paying the 17% duty on it. Okay? The limit now is $75. Most, it should probably be, 900 or 600, something like that. They were going to raise it. I don't know how much. But I would say as a low, 300, as a high, maybe 600, 900. Probably between 3 and 600. Which would be nice because you'd be able to buy a lot of your goods more effectively from Amazon. So if you buy something from Amazon, which will give you free shipping if it's over $50 or something, it's with the post office. It takes time, but free shipping is free shipping. So if you could buy all your clothes, many things from Amazon, okay, and get free delivery. So you could put an order in for $600, and you wouldn't have to pay for it. So what you really need to do now is buy items at Amazon for $75 or less. Your combined order has to be 75 or less, and they'll give you free shipping. So this hurts the retailers in Israel, which, in my opinion, do price fixing and stuff like that and believe us. Okay. So the retailers formed an association and lobbied the Knesset, and they dropped the bill. I'm sure Netanyahu had his hands on that. That was a terrible thing for the people of Israel. He keeps the economy awful in Israel so the Jews don't migrate. He doesn't want Jews coming here, believe me, at all. And if they are going to come, he only wants ultra orthodox, which will support him. You know, and it's so corrupt. Only the ultra orthodox rabbis can issue a kosher certificate to a place of business, and I think it could cost us up to 35%. That's a restaurant, a grocery store, a supermarket, somebody processing food, making food has to be kosher. You know, it's unbelievable what it does to our food costs. Our fuel is about $9 a gallon for diesel. $8 to $9, it varies. There's a $3 per gallon tax, so it's still very expensive. Why? He gives water to Jordan. Why doesn't he make Jordan sell us oil at a good price? You see, what's going on? I'm just giving you the tiniest pieces of information with this guy. Okay. So there was some truck unloading something, if you heard it. So that's what I think it was. It wasn't a bomb or anything. So they've had it with him, a lot of people. If he does get detained, the press is saying it'll cause a lot of civil unrest. It could be a civil war. Well, undoubtedly there'll be a lot of civil unrest. I don't know who would be the next prime minister, but don't expect anything good. Just expect another, spot like him. That's all we've ever had here, and that's all you're going to get until the end of the age. So uh, they tried putting Naftali Bennett in a couple of years ago. He was around for a brief period of time, and he started changing the government, and we noticed it for the better. But he never did all he said he was going to do. He said he was going to build 250,000 low-cost housing units, apartments for Israelis. And that's probably why he got shoved back out. The rich people don't want that. They're the ones benefiting from the high real estate, not the poor people. A lot of people that have been born and raised in Israel leave Israel because they know they can never afford a house in Israel. We rent at very high rent. So it's basically, and you got to pay the landlord's taxes, and the law is stacked completely for the landlord. Well, 80-90% for the landlord. And it's just sick what goes on here. You would never, if a landlord operated in America like he does in Israel, in a lot of jurisdictions, they'd probably fine him, something like $10,000 to $100,000. In some cases, seriously, they'd put him in jail. And the government here supports this. They don't want more Jews coming here. They don't want that. Okay? And he says he does, but he doesn't. So the rabbi goes, yeah, come to Israel. How are they going to afford to come here? If you wanted to get a 2-bedroom apartment with maybe 900 square feet in a rural area where there's not a lot of work and there's nothing going on, you'd probably spend about $200,000 to buy it. Okay? If you wanted to get yourself what they call a blue collar 3-bedroom house with a living room, a master bath, and an extra bath, a very small front and backyard, and a carport that totals maybe 14 to 1,800 square feet. In a rural area in nowhere land, you would be lucky to get such a thing for $350,000 US. I'm talking US dollars, A nice house would be, what they would call an executive house in America would be 700. I'm talking 4-bedroom, maybe 5-bedroom, 2,500, 2,800 square feet, something like that, with a reasonable front and backyard. Probably no garage, but a driveway where you can put a carport in. central air and heat, or room air conditioners, it doesn't matter. Um, in a nice area, you'd be looking at a million and a half, 2.5, $3 million. I live in the middle of nowhere. I don't work. I don't have a regular secular job. But they can't afford to live here. The people, he's breaking them down. The scripture says he's holding their nose to the grindstone. So a lot of people want to get rid of them. Okay? And he tried to make himself a war hero, but he's so crooked and twisted and confused that he couldn't do it right. Okay? So this whole thing with October 7th, Gaza, Hezbollah, it's all screwed up. It's just dragging out. Biden basically hates the guy's guts. Trump seems to get along with him, but let's wait and see. Let me look at the chat. I've given enough chance for the trolls to come in, so let me see what I gotta get rid of with obscene comments and the other things they do if they're here. It's been working, but they're not here. Assad has already fallen. He evacuated himself and his family to Russia. It's just, you're waiting for the end. That's all the other shooter dropped. I have no idea what the price of gold will be tomorrow. How would I know? I don't know. As this war in the Middle East blows up, and I'll explain to you how it will, as I see it, and why it will. Gold will go up, I'm pretty sure, so will silver. And the American dollar may grow in strength too. But let's talk about the Iraqi government. So the parliament or the Congress, whatever you want to call it in Iraq, passed a law yesterday that authorized the president of Iraq to enter the Syria and go into Syria with his military, not Iran-backed militias, the official Iraqi government, which comes to about 300,000 military. They have very little tanks. They have 800 or 900 tanks. They have next to nothing for an air force and nothing for a navy, and they're not a very powerful military. Let's get that. There were rumors that Hezbollah, well, the Iranian-backed militias that are in Iraq, entered to Syria at the tune of 130,000. That was pro-Muslim terrorist media. No. I think it could be as little as 2 or 3 or 4,000. They were coming in very small groups. People are saying that now there's 33,000 of them in Syria, but I can't get any good source on that. I don't believe it. 8 convoys a few days ago. Now, a convoy is what, 100 trucks or something? You've seen pictures of convoys on highways. There's lots of trucks. 8 convoys were trying to come into Syria from Iraq, and some people are saying they were Iranian-backed militias. Others are saying they were the government of Iraq. Well, it's looking like now it was probably mostly Iranian-backed militias. However, it also could have been Iranian soldiers or a combination thereof. And the American jets, the A-10 Warthogs, and I believe it was F-16s, attacked these convoys, and they blew them up or drove them back into Iraq or whatever they did, but it was an unsuccessful move. So how many troops is Iraq going to send to Syria? Well, that's a good question. Iraq is a puppet proxy, whatever you want to call it, state of Iran. What are they going to send in? Well, I would say 30,000 to 50,000 first pull, but they might come in groups of 3,000 or 5,000. Will America attack them? I think so. Will Israel attack them? I don't know. Why would America attack them? For many reasons, one of which they would be a threat to the American bases in Syria, which are 12. And Israel would probably attack them because they would consider them a threat to Israel. I'm not sure under what conditions Israel would attack them. I don't know yet. As of yesterday, the Iraq government had tens of thousands of their soldiers, the government soldiers, not the militias, on the border between Syria and Iraq, obviously to control things. They didn't want to see the rebels start coming into Iraq. So the amount of time for them to mobilize them is not long, but you must bear in mind keeping soldiers entrenched at the border is one thing. They have structures, they're getting food supply because it's all in Iraq, they're getting medical evacs, they can get uniform changes, they got ammo easy to get, they got good communications, they got internet, they got phones, all this stuff, right? They can get on buses and trucks and go into the interior of Iraq. Okay, so that's one thing. Mobilizing them into Syria means they need to have gear, convoys of trucks, they gotta eat, they gotta have ammo, they gotta have uniforms, they gotta have medical, they gotta have communications, they gotta have this, they gotta have that. It's not so simple. So they may not come in today, but they might. I don't know. Or Iraq might say, well, I'm not taking my border guards from our army and putting them in Syria, then our border's not protected. So the border guards may just stay there, this is most likely, and they'll move other soldiers into Syria. But I think it's going to be tens of thousands to fight against the rebels. Now, the rebels have estimated 900 tanks. Now, that's a few days ago. That number may have risen. When they attacked Hama, well, it's being attacked, but Hama is a large city in Syria that Bashar Assad had control over, and it's surrounded on 3 sides now, this morning. So it's the end. So what did Bashar Assad's Syrian Arab army do? They abandoned, they run away. So when they run away, what they probably do is put on civilian clothes, because it's in a city, and just drift away. The rebels were happy enough to deal with that because they can't take their military equipment with them. So they left a lot of military equipment behind. Because if they're walking around with a soldier, they're going to, with a rifle, they're going to stick out. But they could probably conceal the rifle in a duffel bag or something. I don't know. But they left a lot of equipment. We don't know exactly what the rebels got yet. That'll be coming out. The rebels have aircraft, but this is kind of funny, that they got from Syria, attack aircraft. But we saw this in the past, I think, with Al Qaeda, where they were able to learn enough to get the plane to take off. Now, when you're taking off with a plane, you're trying to keep the thing straight on the runway at a very high rate of speed. You're going way over 100 miles an hour. And that by itself could be dangerous, okay? And then when you hit a certain airspeed, they do something called rotate, where they pull back. And the plane lifts up, it gets lifted and start climbing. So your target when you're taking off is the great big wide open sky. Now how are you going to miss the sky? Well, you're not, okay? But they were unable to successfully land the planes Because when you're landing a plane, you got to go to a landing strip, and that's something you could miss. If you don't touch down at the beginning of the landing strip with a jet, you can, you know, you can get the thing on the ground, and then you're going to not stop it in time. You're going to run off the runway. So they weren't doing too good about that. So can they? They're towing the aircraft behind vehicles now as a show of victory. But can they fly the things? Can they get pilots from other countries to come in and help them fly them? Maybe they can. I would say there's a high probability. But learning how to fly a jet is not a week, you know. Now, with them, it might be a week. You know, if you go back to the 1930s in America, there were probably a lot of people flying planes that didn't have much in terms of a license from the FAA. I don't even know if there was an FAA back then, or the 20s or the 30s. And they probably just bought a plane. You went down to your dealer, you bought a plane, and you friends that flew planes would take you and show you how to do it, and you'd figure it out, or you'd kill yourself, you know. Probably figure it out. That's not the case anymore today. And the planes were very simplistic. They had propeller engines, and they were very high lift, and they were not heavy. A lot of them were not made out of aluminum. They're made out of other things, and wood. There were much, you know, when you're dealing with propeller planes, you like when you're landing, it's a lot easier because you're going at a much lower rate of speed, and you're not going to overrun the runway. You know, it to some extent is more forgiving, I guess, than a jet in terms of takeoff and landing. So, could they get jihadists to take off, find the enemy's position, and strafe them and drop bombs and shoot missiles at them, and then worry about landing later? No, they could. If the planes are sophisticated and they figured out they could eject and just make one run with the plane and then get to a reasonable altitude, which is probably 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 feet, or probably 3,000 is enough, and eject. But the casualty rate on ejections is rather substantial. They've never really perfected that too great, you know. I think what they probably should do is have the bottom open up on the plane, and the pilot's strapped into his chair, which has a parachute attached to it, and the whole chair drops down through the open floor of the plane, and then the chute deploys, and he just lands seated in the plane, or he could shred the chair on the way down or something like that. But you know, who knows? So I don't know what they're going to do with the aircraft that they got. This is, I have no idea. Tanks they got, pickup trucks with, you know, various kinds of machine guns and small artillery they got jeeps, they got trucks, they got cars, they got, you know, small weapons, and they're good fighters, and they're motivated. Bashar Assad's troops are not motivated. Bashar Assad's not even in the country. They don't particularly want to get into combat and get killed or wounded. What kind of medical are they going to get? How can they get evacuated? You know, they just saying, no, I didn't sign up for this. I don't care if Bashar Assad goes down. And they run away. So Bashar Assad's government is not going to hold. Now comes the Russians. The Russians have closed several of their bases in Syria, and they have taken all their Navy warships out of the port in Latakia, Syria on the Mediterranean. They've moved a lot of their troops, ground forces, out of Syria as a precaution. But they did leave a certain amount of airplanes there. I don't know how many. It could be, I'm guessing between 6 and 12, something like that. So they are keeping some air bases running somewhere in Syria, and they're attacking the rebel forces that are attacking Syria using these planes, bombing them. They're blowing up civilians. Nobody's going to say anything about that because it's not the Jews. So Russia is still conducting air attacks, but it's nothing massive going on with them. They did take a small missile boat, probably that they evacuated out of their Navy base out to sea. They had it come back in and fire. It was a small boat, and fired some missiles at the rebel positions somewhere. So they trying to, it looks to me like they're trying to make a show of support for Syria and Iran, but it's just tokenism, I think. The general consensus is that Russia cannot afford to send a large military force to Syria because he's so bogged down in Europe with Ukraine and NATO threats. So he could probably keep, a small amount of planes there bombing positions and so forth. But they already got one Pantier anti-aircraft system from Israel, so they can start trying to shoot Russian planes down. Now, there is a thing, there are shoulder-fired anti-aircraft weapons that might work on some of Putin's jets that America could give to the rebel forces. And when these planes come in to make a low run to bomb or shoot rockets, they could shoot 2 or 3 of these at the plane and maybe take it down. We haven't seen that yet, but we may. Iran is saying they're entering war with their soldiers in Syria. So what I think I need to impress upon you is this. If Iraq sends thousands of soldiers into Syria, which they will, and Iran does the same, they're going to be fighting against forces backed by America, Turkey, and Israel. Well, what could go wrong, right? Oh, plenty. When America was attacking some of the Iran-backed militias in Syria, which they've been doing a lot of, they said it was to protect and preserve the American bases. So Iraqi troops and Iranian troops would probably be blown up for the same reason. By America and probably the UK and Israel and maybe others. So you're going to likely see America, UK, Israel having combat with Iranian army soldiers and Iraqi army soldiers in Syria in the next coming few days. And the chances of that developing into a very big war, what people like to call World War III, which is not a biblical term, the probability of some huge war breaking out as a result of this is extremely high. Iran could do a multitude of things. Shut the Persian Gulf down to all shipping, so they would affect a lot of the oil producing countries in the region of the Middle East. Iran could attack the oil producing countries and blow their refineries up on the ground or by the air or with drones or whatever. They have ships that shoot missiles that probably have short range radar, which would be enough from the Persian Gulf. So they could destroy the oil in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, possibly affect Saudi Arabia and Jordan as well, and spike oil prices to cause chaos. That doesn't give Iran a victory, it just makes their life harder. But they might do it because it's got some threat value. So, in other words, they attack, say, Kuwait and get the Kuwait oil refineries, and oil prices then spike, and they stop there and see if America would leave the terror away and leave them alone. Then that's not going to happen. American oil companies are pumping oil out of northeast Syria under the protection of the American military, which is basically stealing their oil, which is basically Israeli oil, but the nations don't recognize that. Okay, so how long will this thing take to blow up? It might take a week. I don't think it's taken a long time. I think Iran and Iraq are talking about how they can bring soldiers into Syria, which would be through Iraq, I'm pretty sure. So Iranian soldiers could go and stage in Iraq along with the Iraq regular army, and they could muster up maybe as 25 or 50 or 60,000, I don't know what, and come in combined. Will the Americans mow down that many troops? Is what they're going to be thinking. It's a big price to pay, and they may try it on a lower level, like 5 or 10,000 troops. But it's basically boiling over. The best way for it to end is the rebels make rapid gains into Damascus, but they're still about 120 miles away from Damascus. And knock out Damascus, make it a ruinous heap, and then the Iranians throw the towel in, and the Russians will throw the towel in and just accept the reality of things. But before that happens, the Iraqi government, with 300,000 soldiers, about 200,000 regular army, and about 100,000 paramilitary, if they go in and whatever, 5, 10, 20, 30,000 soldiers, and that didn't work, well, they can repeat it and send another 30,000 in, and Iran could follow suit and do the same thing. So that's probably what we're going to see, and I think it's going to be a handful of days till we see it. I don't think it's going to take long. And I am rather certain America will get in the fight big way. Let's take a look at the live stream here and see if I have questions. And if I have to play moderator. Poland, huh? Okay. I'm reading the chat. I don't have much going on in the chat. Okay. So it'll start in Syria and then spread to Iraq. Iran will try to save them because Iran knows if it doesn't save Iraq and Syria, the best thing that happens to Iran is the sanctions will hit them from Trump, where the oil's not going to be going out of Iran. It ain't going to work. Okay, Trump will close the Persian Gulf to them, send their ships back. You know, they're going to break Iran with sanctions. That's Trump's plan. And Iran knows it. And if they lose their proxies, there's no, deterrent value. I don't know what Trump will do with Yemen. But for sure, he's going to want that shipping coming back. I think he'll just tell Yemen, you better stop it, or I'm going to just stop you. And they'll say, they're going to kill him and everything else. And then he'll stop bombing Yemen, but extensively. So I don't think we've got, let's see, to January 3rd, let's say it's a month. You're at about 6 to 7 weeks till Trump takes office. And this war in Syria is probably going to take a lot of that time to really build up. So what Biden is doing is he's building a big pile of messes for Trump. Yes, he is. Now, I know a lot of people like Trump, and I know that Trump on the surface appears better for Israel than Biden on the surface, I said. But understand that he's not Superman. Nobody's Superman, doesn't exist. But he's not going to be able to overcome all these problems. And Trump said, okay, take DeSantis. Trump puts Ron DeSantis in. He announced it as Secretary of Defense. So January 20th, assuming Trump's got control of the House and the Senate, they'll approve all his picks. And Ron DeSantis is the Secretary of Defense. Traditionally, that is a job for a four-star general that knows the other generals, that knows the problems in the military, that understands the budget, that knows the problems in Asia Pacific, that knows the problems in Europe, knows the problems in the Middle East, understands their weapons, their limitations, knows the limitations and positives of the Russian and the Chinese and the North Korean weapons, and understands their generals and their military. Because the guy's been dancing around this usually like 20, 30 years. Now they're bringing a guy in from Florida, a governor with no heavy military experience on a big command level as Secretary of Defense. So how long would it take for Ron DeSantis to pick up speed and figure out what's going on? I would say 6 months. Be generous, 3 months. They don't have 3 months. This was a major mistake that Trump made. Major mistake. Ron DeSantis in charge of all the military? No. He doesn't understand. He doesn't have the clearance to read to go to the briefings. He still can't. He can't get the clearance now. I don't think so. They're not going to give him briefings until he's appointed officially and it's approved by Congress. So Ron DeSantis is going to hit the ground January 20th with the mess that Biden dumped on Trump. And he has not yet, Trump and DeSantis have not yet appointed the key people in the Pentagon with all the branches of the military. They haven't put their key people into place yet. And they're going to be facing, they'll be in the middle of wars. Biden's doing everything he can to make sure there's a big war with Russia. And now he's doing everything he can to make sure the Middle East blows up. And you think they're not going to provoke North Korea and China? Maybe not, maybe yes. You think North Korea and China are going to sit still while America and NATO polishes off Russia and Iran, which leaves them virtually undefended, and sanctions will crush them to the point of an overthrow of their governments or a collapse of their governments. So why do you think they're going to sit still and wait for the inevitable instead of rising up with Russia and Ukraine and trying to stop the madness? That's what Biden wants. And the madness will transfer to Trump. The timing is rather perfect for this. There it is. Now you can see it. That's what Biden's dumping on Trump. And I don't know how Trump's going to dig his way out of it. I can't see it myself. How? How's he going to dig it? I mean, he doesn't have his people in place. He doesn't know what's going on. The Biden administration, they're telling us, is not cooperating with Trump by giving him information and briefings on what's going on with the Gaza ceasefire. So it's logical to assume that Biden's not telling Trump much of anything like he's supposed to. So Trump's in the dark. I'll be right back. Biden is doing everything he can to doom Trump to failure. Okay? Piece of cheese, starving. Trump's going to hit the ground, and now he's going to start. If Hamas doesn't give the hostages back by January 20th and do a ceasefire, all hell's going to break loose on Hamas, which means Yemen, who's supporting them, Iran, Iraq, all that, right? Trump will make good on those words. But the Middle East will be a mess by that time. Now let's talk about 30 million or more aliens in America. So he's going to use the military to go to work on that, right? Yeah, he said so. North Korea is threatening nuclear war. Trump's upset about him with that. China and Taiwan, China and the Philippines, China and Japan, North Korea and Japan. He doesn't want the war with Zelensky and Ukraine and Russia continuing. Yet it is continuing because NATO and Biden, who's also in NATO, of course, giving weapons to Ukraine and trying to get a $26 billion aid package in before Trump takes over. Which will keep Ukraine going for what, 6 months, a year, more? What's Trump do? And Trump's got to count the bricks. And he's threatening to put sanctions of up to 100% on all the countries that are going to use BRICS to devalue the dollar, including India. India always wants exemptions. Well, you're putting sanctions on Iran, but Biden says, okay, India, you're not subject to the sanctions. You can get your cheap oil from Iran. You think Biden's going to do that? I guarantee you not. So India's going to go to where? Russia? Same problem, sanctions. What's India do? How many Indian people are working in America that Trump will get rid of? He won't renew the visas, the work visas and stuff like that. That'll hurt the cash flow back into India. There's lots of them in America. What's India going to do? Go in the war against America? No. I don't know what India's going to do. Modi wants to be everybody's friend and just try to build India up, which is good for India to some extent. But Trump's not going to play ball. He will sanction Russia and he will sanction Iran with the military to back it up. He will not get pushed around like that. And Iran knows this. So does Russia. They got to make a move before Trump. And Biden's opening the door. Now Trump wants to revamp the FBI. You know how hard that's going to be to get the FBI effective again? As a young guy, I spent some time in law enforcement stuff. The FBI, originally under J. Edgar Hoover, Well, it came out. Initially, it was. I think they called it Bureau Investigation. They didn't have guns. Like food and drug guys, even in the 70s, didn't have guns. We had a friend of the family, kind of, that he worked for the Food and Drug Administration. He had a credential. You know, he had an ID card with a photo, Food and Drug Investigator. But he didn't have a gun, he didn't have a badge, he didn't have powers of arrest or anything like that, right? He didn't have a police radio, and he was chasing a guy that was selling bad eggs. He was in a carpet suit in New York, and the police pulled him over, and they gave him a ticket. That's what they thought of him. See, the police in New York, anyway, they want to see, they don't want to see credentials. Like IRS revenue agents, tax collectors, they have a credential packet. It's in a leather case. I don't know if you've ever seen these things. There's two cardboard things, each about like this. A leather case opens up, and it's behind plastic, and they're very impressive looking credentials. But they have no badge, they have no gun, they have no powers of arrest. It's just to intimidate people. IRS revenue agent, you know. And people think they're, like an FBI guy or something, because the credentials are as impressive as FBI credentials or something like that, right? So, a lot of police departments in California as well don't consider these people law enforcement agents because they're not. Okay, like alcohol, tobacco, and firearms has special agents. Those are real law enforcement agents, and then they have investigators. They have a credential, the two-piece credential, like an IRS revenue agent, that you know looks impressive, but they have no badge, no no gun, no nothing, no powers of arrest. And they don't get the. I mean, a cop may, if he didn't do much wrong, and they let him go or something like that. Or he could say, "I'm on official duty. You can call my boss." They might let him go or something like that. But if you get stopped in your law enforcement, um, you basically just, in the old days, you would just show your badge and they'd say, "Go." That was the end of the traffic stop. It wasn't, you know, who you, what are you doing? Are you on duty? You don't do anything like this. Federal agents are on duty officially 24/7. So when a cop asks him if he's on duty, even if he's got three kids and a dog and his wife in his SUV, he's going to say yes because it's the truth. If they give him a ticket, special agents are like executives, they have a secretary. So they go back and they have the secretary call the judge. They leave the ticket with the secretary. And she calls the judge and tells the judge that he was on duty, which is the truth, and he got a ticket. The police didn't understand. Could you dismiss the case, please? And a lot of times the judge does, because he doesn't want to have the federal agency having an axe to grind with him. What does he care? He doesn't care. Does he get anything out of it? No, he doesn't care. It's less work for him. Dismiss. If he doesn't dismiss it, what happens next? Well, probably two special agents from the agency would go down to the courthouse when they know the judge is there and present their credentials and bring the ticket and ask to speak to the judge in person. Now, it's easy for the judge to say to the secretary, "Oh, I'll take it under advisement." Click, But now when they're confronting him, he's sitting there thinking, "Well, what if they stake out my house and start trying to look for my kids doing something wrong, or my wife, or go through my tax returns?" He's probably going to throw the ticket out. If not, then what happens? I've never heard of it happening. What would they do? I have to think There's really the next thing they could do is go to the district attorney and tell the district attorney what happened with their credentials, right? Because when you fight a traffic ticket, the district attorney has to represent the state or the city or whatever and make the case. So they would go to the district attorney. I don't think this really happens, but they would go to the district attorney and explain what happened, and then the district attorney would probably say he'll dismiss the case. Then the judge has no say. The judge just would never see it on the docket, probably never know what happened, wouldn't care, and forget about it. It's just a traffic ticket. In the event the district attorney didn't do it, which is, I would say, extremely unlikely, then I guess they could file an appeal, or they would just take the ticket. Now, when the federal agents are undercover, what will frequently happen is they have a car that's registered to a corporation that doesn't lead anywhere to the government, and they could be given an alias and get, most states will give federal agents the right to create fictitious people driver's licenses. So they could create a person out of thin air, and the state runs a driver's license for them and gives it to them whatever name, date of birth, and stuff they want. They build a false identity. They could do that with banks and get credit cards. So they can make an undercover agent appear to exist when he doesn't exist. The Social Security card, they could get him a passport from State Department, which will more than happy cooperate. They could get him a driver's license. They could get him probably 2 credit cards or 1 credit card. What else would you need to make yourself look legit? Probably not much else, would you? You want a library card or a supermarket discount card? You can get all that crap, right? And so they get stopped, and they're not in an official vehicle, and they don't want to tell the cop that they're undercover because in a lot of communities the cops are not clean. So what do? Well, he'll just sit there and say, gee, do you know how fast you were going? No, I don't, officer. Well, you were going 84 in a 70. Oh, officer, I really didn't know. I'm sorry. That's all right. Sit here. I'll be right back. Don't get out of your car. Shut the engine. Yes, sir. They go back to the car. They write the ticket. And they say, here's your ticket for speed. And you got to sign, and you have a date to appear. And yes, sir. Right? Thank you, sir. Have a nice day, officer. Right? And so what? I mean, if the guy doesn't need that ID, they just get another ID. But if he's entrenched undercover with that ID and he doesn't pay the ticket, he'll get a bench warrant, which could interfere with his undercover work or maybe help it even. I don't know. So chances are he just go write a expense report and pull the cash from the office and or have the office give him the cash and go down and pay the ticket. He doesn't care. He doesn't get points on his license. It's not really him. It's an undercover personality that doesn't exist. So that goes on a lot of times. In the old days, if the feds were operating in Florida, they would use a plate like maybe from Mississippi or Georgia or someplace like that, so they couldn't check the records quickly. They'd have to have dispatch would have to call Mississippi from Florida and say, this is the Orlando Police Department and we'd like to get a report on this vehicle, and they'll tell you who owns it, when it was registered, if the registration's current, and if they have any, warrants for this person that owns the car, stuff like that, right? But that would take maybe 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe take an hour. Depends how busy everybody is and how snap. You know, if it's at night, there's probably nobody to talk to in the other state. So the cop looks at it, he's in the dark. Now they can do it with the computers, but back then they couldn't. So the cop was in the dark and they just let you go. So the feds always used out of state plates. So you couldn't, you know, if they were following you, you couldn't figure out who they were very easily. Anyway, so Trump's got so many problems that he's inheriting. He's got to deal with BRICS, with crazy sanctions, right? Trump's the sanction king. He's got to deal with 30 to 50 million illegal aliens using the military. He has to beef up law enforcement like ICE and, you know, other agencies, Homeland Security probably, and that's going to take, as I've told you in the past, until you get those agents out on the street, 9 months, a year. Really. You got to start recruiting them. Okay? Then they fill out job applications and they send it in. Then the bosses or the people doing that review the applications and try to figure out who they want, right? They don't know who they want, so they start looking, depending what their requirements are, you know, and then they start inviting people to come down for interviews. But before that, they also have to take a test. So they send an application in and they usually have to take a test. You gotta wait for the test to be scheduled. These tests can vary. Normally it's gonna start with a written test. So they're gonna drop a lot of people out with the written test. Let's say your perfect score is 100 and you qualify for the job if you get a 70. That's about where they run. Then if you were in the military, you get an extra 5 points out of nowhere just because you were in the military. Now, if you're in the military in combat, you get 10 points. So now, if a guy that was in combat from the military goes in there and he hits a 76, it automatically is an 86. And the chances of him getting hired are really good. Okay? But the guy that gets 76 is probably not that good. So they start at the top with the highest scores, and they like the application, and then they call them in for an interview. Now, at the interview, a lot of them aren't going to like him, and they're not going to want to go further with the guy. But if they do go further with the guy, the next step is they're going to want a physical. So that could vary. They can send him to one of their doctors. He could just go to any old doctor because when they report to the school, they recheck them with medical, you know. Depending how they do it, and if he gets through the medical, they'll have another interview with him. And if it seems, you know, they'll go over things like, well, you could get stationed anywhere in the United States. How do you feel about that? A lot of guys drop out. No, I'm not leaving Florida. A guy from Florida could wind up in Wyoming in the winter. A guy from Wyoming could wind up in Key West, Florida, going through 103-degree weather in the summer that he's not used to. You know, all this kind of stuff. A guy from New York could wind up in Texas. A guy from Texas could wind up in San Francisco. You know, a lot of people drop out. They don't want to keep moving their families, and they don't want this. Okay, so it's a dropout. Now, if they really, really want a guy, they'll give him a commitment to go to work in a certain field office, but the guy would have to be, you know, in law enforcement, in another agency with a great record, and they really want him, and then they might guarantee him a posting somewhere or something like that. But then he's still got to go to months of school away from home and all this. So anyway, so then the guy, they have to run a background investigation on the guy before he goes to the academy. All right? Now, if they want to do a background investigation fast, they can do it in days. When I was working for the Fed in law enforcement many, many, many years ago, the background investigation, I mean, people will call me up on the phone. you know, every day. They're coming around asking questions about you, this and that. It was like lightning. They did it. If they want to do it fast, they can do it fast. If they don't want to do it fast, then it's not fast. But these things are very expensive. It can cost them $100,000 to run a background investigation. So they're very careful before they do that. And they get a certain amount of fallout from the background investigation. Now, if he passes the background investigation, then a lot of agencies want to polygraph the guy. Okay, which polygraphs don't work. Anybody that knows anything about them knows that they're just an interrogation tool designed to bluff and fool you. They don't know what the heck's going on with these polygraphs. People are routinely taught how to beat the box. It's not. I mean, not with the thumbtack in the shoe, and it's not anything good. It really isn't. It's the opinion of the polygrapher or the polygraph operator that the person's deceiving. But that's all it is, you know. If somebody wants to get a job in law enforcement and for some reason they're having a lot of trouble getting hired, put yourself through polygraph school. It's not that expensive. I don't know how many weeks it is. It's maybe 8 to 12 weeks or something like that. And then you become a certified polygraph operator and you apply to departments. I would say any department you apply to is going to call you in for an interview. They all want a polygraph guy. I mean, they'll take you if you got problems in your background or problems getting fired from jobs. They'll take you. Because they don't have to send somebody to polygraph school. The other thing you could also do that is become an EMT, the guy that goes on the ambulance, not a paramedic, an EMT. I don't know, 6 8 week school. Go get yourself certified as an EMT. You'd be surprised how many police departments will gobble you up. They love having EMTs. If you're a paramedic, my gosh, they'll take you out to dinner to recruit you. You know, they use you to work at high risk areas, go out on raids with teams, all kinds of stuff. They could use you at the jail if they run a jail, like they're a sheriff and they run a big jail. They can use you in that capacity. They just love you, you know. People don't know that. Nobody teaches them that. So there's all kinds of backdoor ways to get in. You know, you could get in pretty easily. It's not that hard. You just got to be creative. You know. You go to school and you study criminology, so what? What do they care about that for? Criminology doesn't teach you anything. You know, I had a degree in criminology. It doesn't give you any skill set that they care about. It's worthless. Become an accountant. Get a CPA. That's hard to get a CPA, but if you just had a degree in accounting, they would gobble you up because they could use you on white collar crime. So what would you need to have a mail? Let's say you just took 16 hours in college of accounting or 20 or something like that. Had a double major or something where it was your minor. They eat you up because they need people like that. The regular cops don't know anything about accounting. But if you actually became a CPA, which is very hard to do, most people aren't going to go through that trouble, you know. Then they would go crazy for you, you know, because they could use you to testify in cases and stuff like that. Some people get out of law school, become lawyers, pass the bar, and join police departments. A lot of police departments hire an attorney. They send them to the academy to swear him in. They give him a badge and a gun, and they work as consultants in the police department. They can advise citizens of various things to stay out of trouble. They could advise businesses of things to stay out of trouble. It's good PR for the sheriff or the police. They can help structure cases with the prosecutor's office because they understand what the prosecutor is doing. Um, and that's for somebody that doesn't want to become a prosecutor, just wants to be a police officer for some reason. But a lot of them, they can use that as a stepping stone to become a prosecutor, which is usually a hard job to get. Some prosecutor positions, like in Florida, state's attorney, they get a badge and credentials, they can carry a gun. They're like law enforcement. They don't go to an academy or anything like that, but they're, treated very well by other police agencies, and you know, um, they're not supposed to go around arresting people. If they need something like that, they're supposed to call the agency, the police department, to come do it. But there's all these things. So Trump wants to revitalize the FBI. That's a monumental job. So they started out without badges and guns. Then they got badges and guns. And they were small. And actually, if you're talking to maybe even 1970, there were about 1,600 FBI agents in the whole United States. And a tremendous amount of them were doing either background investigations or surveillance of diplomats, politicians, criminals, and stuff. That's about what they did. I'll be right back. They didn't do much. They used to keep their guns locked in the trunk of their car. So the FBI used to do as little criminal work as they could get away with. They did white slavery cases for somebody bringing prostitutes over state lines. They worked interstate car theft, stealing cars and bringing it over state lines. They worked, let's see, what else? Not much. Checks, bad checks over state lines, and they worked bank robberies and some kidnappings. If you were a multimillionaire, they'd work your kidnapping. And that was about it. And so they had criminal agents that worked that. So the lowest of the FBI agents were usually working bad checks. That was FBI agents that they didn't think had much of a career. But a lot of FBI agents kept the job anyway. It was a good job, had a lot of security, benefits, prestige. And when you retired, you can get a good job in private industry with a high rate of pay. And they kept the job. The car theft was pretty similar. They weren't real high-ranking FBI agents. The kidnapping, they had certain teams that would go all over the country, work the kidnappings they wanted to get involved with, which were precious few. They knew what they were doing. And then they had their good people were what they used to call the security squad. They would surveillance diplomats, and they were getting blackmail on people, you know. They usually weren't collecting positive intelligence. They were anti-intelligence or counterintelligence, you know. So they were a nothing agency, really. They, you know, people in America slept well at night because the FBI watched them. They didn't do much. Background investigations. They weren't much of an agency. I knew some of these characters, you know. They didn't do much. Then Hoover got out, and they put in somebody else. And the FBI agents, I knew one guy who was a big shot in the FBI. He was a SAC at one time. He said that the when Hoover was gone, they didn't even want to talk to him. They just basically ignored him until he retired. Then they started hiring women, and they started hiring minorities, which Hoover didn't want. And then they started hiring people with sexual preferences and, you know, all this stuff. And they expanded to where there's 16,000. And I don't think now they work on criminal cases at all. They just do anti-terrorism. I find it, if I got that right, for a few years now. But I'm not certain about that, you know. I mean, if there's a bank robbery, do the FBI agents show up and write a report? Probably, but I don't know for sure anymore. I really don't know. So, you know, what is he going to do with these 16,000 FBI agents? They got some kind of civil service job protection, not complete like a secretary in the Department of Education or something like that, but they got some protection. I don't know what he's going to do with them. I have no idea. But they're not going to dance to his type of music, I don't think. They're maybe, I don't know how he's going to work with them. They're well trained. A lot of SBOTs, tons. And I don't know which Trump will like, but I don't know what he's going to do with them. You know, I mean, they'd probably be easily made efficient in collecting and kicking out illegals. I guess they would adapt to that quickly and easily. I don't think it'd be difficult. I don't know. But that's going to be a big job. So how the heck is Trump going to deal with all this stuff? He can't. Don't you see it? He can't. It's not going to work. Trump's going to be floundering around his first year at least. He's going to be trying to keep his head above water. Now, he is a very bright individual. And this particular character, Trump, is very good at problem solving. And he's very good at picking people, although his first term he picked a lot of people and then had to fire them, but he's probably gotten better at that. And he knows how to do that. He knows how to delegate. And he knows how to play golf for all his people getting the job done, which is how an executive thinks. My job is to hire the right people and then oversee. But I don't go to work every day and sit at a desk from 9 to 5. Okay? He delegates, hires staff. Trump knows how to do that. He's got many years of experience. He's trying to bring Elon Musk in to streamline the government. He wants to get rid of the IRS. Believe me, he wants to get rid of the Federal Reserve Bank too. You know, if you're talking about a dinner plate, you know, you would think Trump's plate's full like this. Trump's plate's full like this. Trump's not going to be able to eat that plate for a year or more. He takes over January 20th. His people are not in control yet. The Biden people are there. So then he has to get Congress to approve all his appointments, you know, Secretary of Defense, Homeland Security Secretary, you know, Secretary of State and all this stuff. And then they first go to work. So they got to bring their own people in, their assistants, their subordinates at a very high level. And then those subordinates start changing department heads, and then they got control of the agency. That's a few months. Then they got to figure out what's going on. They got to go through the budgets. They got to go through the record of success. I mean, it's a monumental job. And at the same time, Trump is also working on the Food and Drug Administration to fix their wagon, which is interesting. He has to work on like Department of Education, all the agencies, Department of Transportation, Fish and Wildlife, or whatever they call it in the federal level, right? He has to, all of this stuff. How the heck is he? Do you understand? At the same time, he's inheriting multiple wars with American involvement. Trump's going to prove to be a very disappointing leader, and most people will never understand what I just explained to you, that Biden set him up. Maybe they have a move to try to impeach Trump later on. They lost the election. Let's wait 3 months or 6 months or 9 months and try to impeach him. Maybe we can get the people to impeach him, or maybe the people will rise against him, or maybe this, or maybe that. I don't know. Or maybe they're just hoping that he does such a bad job the Democrats get back in power after 4 years. I don't know. They don't believe in Bible prophecy, so they got their own narrative they get from the demons, and it's the Trump is inheriting the theater of the absurd. Now there's people you're going to talk to and say, no, Trump is great, he can do it, he can handle it. Hogwash. His military will be disjointed. They're going to have new leaders with new policies, practices, procedures, ideas, concepts that the military is completely foreign to the military. You don't just send them a memo and they just go click like Robbie the Robot or something and change. It don't work that way. And I think Trump has to expand the military and build the military back up. Because I don't know what Biden did to the military, but a lot of people say the military ain't what it's supposed to be in America anymore. Let's take a look at the chat and see if I need to deal with anything here. All the days of the Lord's Supper were to be eaten? That makes no sense to me. I'm not going to take it down. I have no idea what you're expressing. You're trying to tell us something over there, but I have no idea what you're trying to express. Really, I can't understand what you're trying to convey. But I'm not going to take your post down. I don't think you're evil intended. I just don't know what in the world you're talking about. I doubt anybody else does, but feel free. So, let me get back to my notes for a minute. So when the Iranian and the Iraqi official army come into Iranian army and the Iraqi army come into Syria to fight against the rebels that are being supported by America, Turkey, and Israel, what do you think's going to happen? They're going to just let the Iraqis and the Iranians run amok and take Syria back, and then the American bases would have to be closed and they'd have to leave, and then the caliphate, which would consist of Syria, Iraq, and Iran at that time, having lost Lebanon and Gaza, or they would also have Yemen. What do you think's gonna? You think they're gonna let them do that? I think the chances of that happening are slim and none. Although, if they wanted to hurt Israel, that would be a good thing to do, because then once they put Assad back in power, they would set up shop in Syria to attack Israel, and Iran would have another effective proxy to point at Israel. So Biden is sick enough to do something like that, but I don't think that's his plan. No, they're going to fight against the Iranian troops with aircraft, predominantly inside um, Syria. And then it'll have to spread into Iraq, because they'll retreat to Iraq. Weapons will come in from Iraq, so they'll have to hit Iraq. And then comes Iran, who's violating the nuclear treaty, the IAEA, and the IAEA is saying they're doing it, and they're admitting it. So that's the motive for the Americans to take out Iran. That's going to be the motive. Of course, fighting with them in Syria is going to be a nice motive unto itself. It's not going to take long until they attack American troops. They attack American bases and have done so. The American bases in Syria have been attacked by the Iranian-backed militias 172 times. $172 times. And that's an old figure. It might be 180 or so by now, or higher. So, America got motive here. And they're backing the Kurds, and the Kurds are fighting against Bashar Assad. And Turkey doesn't like the Kurds, and Turkey's fighting against Bashar Assad. And Turkey and Russia are pitted at each other because they're both on different sides of this thing. And America and Israel are in on it. And you think they're going to let Iraq? First of all, Turkey doesn't have any great love for Iraq, Syria, or Iran, and they're not going to sit there just because Iraq and Iran want Bashar Assad to stay in power. Turkey's not going to say, "Oh, okay," that's not going to work. Maybe Turkey is just a sleeper agent for the Muslims, like they tried with Obama, who was running around saying he was a Muslim, to see if the Muslims would make friends with him, but that didn't get anywhere. So maybe they're doing that with Erdogan in Turkey. He's just running around playing "I hate America" games, but really he's in deep with NATO. That could be the case. He's not afraid of Russia, because if Russia comes and attacks Turkey, NATO gets involved, and that's the end of Russia. So Russia's not going to do anything in the homeland in Turkey. Russia might fight against the militias that Turkey is supporting. So what? Erdogan doesn't care about that. What's the time frame? Well, the time frame, I think, is that this thing is in full boiling over by the time Trump gets sworn in. But I think that in a week you're going to see a significantly huge increase in the fighting in Syria. Remember, America's been keeping their aircraft. Well, they have some aircraft carriers running around someplace. The Harry Truman is around here someplace, I believe. I don't know where. But they've got, I don't know, about 12 or 14 warships running around in the Middle East. Um, they got all kinds of troops, probably 50, 60,000 troops in the Middle East. They got hundreds of aircraft, all sorts of stuff. And they're there for Iran. Now, one of the things you could probably expect from Israel is when Iranian troops enter Syria, Netanyahu will try to get a green light from Biden to teach Iran a lesson and get them to cool their jets and go over to Iran and bomb stuff because their radar is still gone. So they can't take down the planes and they can't guide the missiles. What could Israel take down? Well, where do you want to start? Let's go the nuclear facilities. That, which is, Biden's probably going to leave that for Trump. So Trump could flare up the Muslim world pretty good by doing that. Military bases, weapons factories, air bases, drone factories, drone bases, and maybe hit the ports and the piers for oil, but I don't think Biden's going to greenlight that. As we get closer to Trump, what Netanyahu will do, as I know this character, is he'll start, I would say maybe around January 1st or even Christmas time. He'll start talking to Trump about what he can do and what he can't do, and Trump will advise him. So even in late December and early January, Netanyahu may make moves that Biden's not fond of, putting it mildly, and Trump is. That's a dangerous game for Netanyahu to play. So personally, I think if we get rid of Netanyahu, it would be a good thing. Now, Ben-Gvir, the security minister of Israel, he says, I want to talk to Trump. Now remember, Trump said if Hamas doesn't return the hostages and do a ceasefire with Israel, which means Israel has to accept the terms. Israel sent Hamas a ceasefire proposal yesterday. We don't have the details of it. Rest assured, they'll never agree to it. You can take that to the bank. They counter-threatened Trump, and they're not about to give the hostages back. And then they said to Trump that if he does the all hell breaks loose, they're going to kill all the hostages. They're not. They probably intend to keep these hostages for years. They're trying to get themselves to run Gaza. So that would be like after World War II and Germany was over, you went to the SS and the Nazi party and said, you run Germany. See, that's what Hamas wants. Okay? So they're not going to return the hostages by January 20th. I don't see it. Netanyahu may be able to find a way to grab 2 or 3 or 4 hostages or something and rescue them. Maybe, I don't know. That happened once, it might happen again. But some people think there's a good 50 or so hostages. I don't know how many are still alive. I have no idea. But so Trump's going to try to make good on his word. So Ben-Gvir says, I want to work with Trump. Listen to Ben-Gvir's plan. It goes back to Moshe Feiglin, who was one of the best members of the Knesset Israel had. Of course, Netanyahu torpedoed the guy's career. What Feiglin wants to do is displace the occupants of Gaza, the civilians, to another country or countries. Give them a basket of money. I don't know how much. You could do 15,000, 50,000, probably in between. They feel they can approach countries that are poor. They could be anywhere. Africa comes up, and they could also find other countries in Asia, probably in South America. And when these people emigrate, out of Gaza. They surrender all their ID. They have to have some type of ID to get out, and then they got to surrender it. It has to be legitimate ID. And they probably do fingerprints and stuff, so they know it's really the person. And then they're signing a document that they will never come back to Gaza no matter what. And then they're given transportation, a ticket, or whatever to take themselves to the new country, and they're probably allowed to ship a certain amount of their possessions at the expense of Israel. And then when they get to that country, they're given a basket of cash, which could be, I heard the figure $50,000 bandied around by Moshe Feiglin in the past. Now, Moshe Feiglin worked it out and said that he thinks it's cheaper to do that than to engage in the war. You know, every time the Iron Domes are firing, it's what, I don't know, $100,000, $200,000 or something. You know, it's cheaper to just do that. He says the ones that want to stay there have to take an oath to support Israel, which Muslims are allowed to lie, so they might do it. And then they're given a temporary status to stay in Gaza, and they're monitored very carefully for 5 years. And if they do anything stupid, that's over with, then they gotta go, or I don't know what. So the countries that host these people have to give them a permanent residency with a path to citizenship, which might be, 5 years or something like that. So Israel won't play ball with them. And if they get involved with criminality, they're on their own. But if they keep their nose clean, then they should eventually be a citizen. And there has to be an opportunity for them to work. And if they give them $50,000 and you send here, let's just run some numbers. Let's say you ran, I don't know, we'll pick a number, 40,000 to a country, and you gave them $50,000 each. That's $2 billion. You would help that country so much. But it would kill us if you really were going to try to send $1 million out of there. How could we do it? It'd probably have to be 15,000, something like that. Remember, Gaza's a rat hole. What do they got to stay there? They said it would take a massive fleet of garbage trucks a year to haul the debris out of that place, or months or something. So just to get to the point where you take the debris out might take 6 months. Then you got to start construction, and then you got to assume there's no war during this period of time. So he wants to emigrate them. It's not immigrate; it's emigrate out of Gaza. And I'm assuming Ben Gvir is using the plan that Moshe Feiglin worked out, which was pretty good, or something like that. Jordan's not going to take them. Egypt's not going to take them. Saudi's not going to take them. Yemen's not. Nobody's going to take them. So you got to put them someplace with money. There's no way you can get them out. And then they want Israelis to move back in to Gaza, which is a little difficult because there's no good housing left to speak of there. So what they would probably do is similar to the West Bank. They would do what they call a caravan, or a mobile home, not a motorhome, a mobile home. They tend to favor 26-foot single wides, but I suppose they could do a 40-foot as well. So they put a trailer down, and then you have a little swath of concrete that you used to go up in there. You can barbecue. You have a canopy. You have a little yard. You can put a fence around it. You hook it up to plumbing. You hook it up to electric, and you hook it up to gas line, or you buy gas tanks and you use your cooking gas that way, and you have electric and sewage and water. So that's how they hook it up. And they live in the mobile homes, and then they would start building apartments and stuff like that, much like the West Bank. Or they build private houses or whatever they're going to do. And Israelis could move down there, and the land would be dirt cheap. And the houses, of course, you got raw material costs. It's not going to be dirt cheap, but it's going to be much, much less than what you pay in Israel. I would say you'd be down 60, 70% in price. So you might be able to get yourself a nice house for, a nice house, 1,200 square feet, 2 or 3 bedrooms, probably 1 full bath and 1 half bath, a kitchen, a tiny dining room, some closets, a carport, stuff like that. Probably for 60, 70,000, 80,000 dollars, something like that. It would be in that range, I'm thinking. So that would make it very affordable. So a lot of people won't want to live there because they have their own house. What are you going to do for work down there? That's another question. And they'll also set up supermarkets there. They might have a truck and open air market there. You could be near the beach. It's very nice weather in Gaza because it's south, so it's a lot warmer. The beach would have to get cleaned, which Israel knows how to do. They would clean the sand, and then they would go out and clean probably out 100, 200 meters, clean all the dirt, because they're filthy people. It's all sewage and stuff. They have to clean all that up. And, there would be a rebuilding. How long would something like that take? Years. That's why they would do the mobile homes. The government would have to get involved, and they would start getting these caravans, mobile homes. There's really nice ones that come out of Germany. I've seen them. They're quite nice. They're smallish, If you've got 2 small children, a couple and 2 small children could live in a 20-footer. Maybe the way Israelis live, 2 small children and a baby would even be able to make it in that. For a family of 4, you'd be pretty okay. If they were big kids, it'd be a little bit tight. Big kid, I'm talking, over 10, 10 years old, 11 years old, and they want to start being on their own more. I never heard of a double wide there, but you could get a 40-footer, which would easily, you could handle 4 kids and a man and a wife. Or a couple could live. But you see, these places are not for the elderly that are retired. It's a little hard for that life. What they would do is they would put fencing around the areas where the Israelites were living, and they would have security that would come from the people living there predominantly, and they would all take turns so many hours a week doing patrol. They would have military radio, police radio, and they would have military rifles, and they would be able to control things unless they were shoulder-fired missiles or mortars and stuff like that, in which case they would have to call the military in to deal with it. But they make sure that that's very, very unlikely before they let the Israelis move in there. And they would have to be careful when they leave and drive. It can be dangerous. They got to watch themselves. They might go in caravans. So somebody takes their car and they want to drive into Israel proper. And they got to go a distance of 11 or 12 miles through Gaza to get into Israel. they would um, stop at the gate and wait for 3 or 4 cars to collect, and they'd have a gun in each car, and then they would have a caravan, and then it would be a little bit difficult to attack them because, a lone wolf attack, because 3 or 4 cars or 5 or 6 could return fire on the guy. So they do stuff like that, and it's just the way it is. Some of them would just have a pistol, others would have a rifle, some would have both. It varies. So it'd be a harsh life. It's not for old people. It's not for very young people. It's for you know people that have perhaps been in the military, and the husband and wife, and they're used to this type of thing, and they could get a cheap place to live, but where are they going to work? you know, you know, People will open up businesses. They'll open up cell phone stores, food stores, fast food stores, restaurants. Um, what else? The Kupado leaves, the medical places will have to go in there and set up some facility, or else they'll have to go to Israel for medical. So medical could be punitive if you need doctors. It's a rough thing. So I really don't know what's going to happen. Okay? With that, Trump's not about to fulfill Bible prophecy and let Israel take the land back and reoccupy it. If you think Trump's going to do that, boy, you better rethink things. So, is it possible that Netanyahu does get bounced and a new regime comes in that's right wing, right about the time Trump comes in, and they go to Trump and say, we want to, throw the Palestinians out, move into Gaza. And Trump says, basically, over my dead body, are you moving into Gaza? I don't care what you do, but you ain't moving back to Gaza. I'm not going to get Satan mad at me and start reversing prophecy. Are you crazy? And then what happens? Well, then Ben Gavir and Smotrich and the ultra right wing that now run the government just do it anyway. You see, the time is right for an ultra right government. Netanyahu is not ultra right. He's dragging the wars out. He doesn't want the people to be armed. If the people were armed, every Jew in Israel go down and get your free gun. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the government. If you want to buy a gun, get a police report from any police station. Probably take 5 minutes, pay 50 shekels. Go to the gun store with your ID card and that, and walk out with the gun. This kind of thing. Or take a course with the gun, which the gun stores administer. It takes a few hours, and this is what it used to be. And then, where you take an 8-hour course or something. I could agree with that, right? And then you got your gun, and that would end the terrorism, wouldn't it? Let's say you put another 800,000 guns on the street in Israel. That's the end of terrorism. The terrorism just reverts to pointless suicide, where you attempt to hurt the Israelis and die. That's all it does. So it would be, you heard of death by cop, this would be, or suicide by cop, this would be suicide by Jew, or Israeli, or whatever. So, and here in Smotrich, if we moved into the west, into Gaza, we'd put machine gun posts up there. They'd build watchtowers, and they'd put 50 calibers in there. Here's 4,000 rounds of ammo. Here's, you got a big square. You put, 2 or 4 machine gun posts over there. If they try to overrun you, end the story, right? They might even put a tank or 2 in there. This is the way Ben Gavir and Smotrich think. When they go in, they're going to make sure that the Jews don't get hurt and they don't have any trouble. They would not be beyond electrified fences. They would not be beyond landmines in between fences. You got to make sure kids can't get in there. So you'd have like a real serious fence with razor ribbon, and then further in you'd have another fence, and then you might have a piece of land, say 60 meters or something like that, or 200 meters that's full of landmines, or a moat even, a 20-foot ditch full of water, and then on the other side there's a fence, and then a second fence. How are you gonna get through that? Um, they would really. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they went into a big settlement and put 2 or 3 tanks in the settlement and gave them military jeeps, or just assigned soldiers to the settlement that know how to operate the tanks and stuff like that, and that's their military duty. And you don't need machine gun nests because the tanks generally have 2 machine guns, or at least one, and that's plenty good because you can't kill a tank very easily. And let the soldiers do the perimeter security with sensors and cameras, day and night vision, alarms and whatnot. And then if anything happens, they engage and get on the radio and call for backup, which could be helicopters, jets, Humvees, trucks full of soldiers, all of the above. And that would be basically what goes on. The world will have a conniption fit if that happens. Look, the other day, the UN General Security Council had a meeting, and 97 people in the UN voted that Israel should withdraw to the pre-67 borders, which means give back the Golan Heights to Syria, which is a joke, give back the West Bank, which is a bigger joke, and it makes sure we never go to the Golan Heights, to the Sinai Peninsula, or we never go back into Gaza. Most of Europe abstained, and the countries that signed Trump's fantastic Abrahamic Accord, which was a piece of crap, stupid harebrained scheme, they all voted against Israel. They voted for the pre-67 borders, or the 67 borders, whatever you want to call it. The Abrahamic Accord partners with Israel. Yeah, great idea, Trump. Attaboy. So, if Netanyahu goes down, the right wing could emerge. I think the 2 witnesses will come first, if you want my opinion. But Netanyahu may go down, and the 2 witnesses may come in and shore it up. Remember in Zechariah 12, when the siege is in place, we don't see or hear nothing about the IDF or the Israeli military. So they could already be defunct. It could happen, and there could be a civil war. And then the 2 witnesses emerge to protect Israel. You got that one more time. There could be a civil war over Netanyahu going to jail, and this kind of thing. See, what the Supreme Court's probably thinking is Netanyahu is firing up the Syria war so he could say, I can't work on my criminal case, I got another war in Syria. Now they're doing it, they're pushing this criminal case. They want him to start appearing in court. They're pushing it because Gaza is not really much of a war, and Hezbollah's in ceasefire, and Syria and Iraq are not much of a war, and Iran's not attacking us, and Yemen can't do anything. So, I think they want to put him in detention because he doesn't show up for court. He says he can't come. He's got the war. So they'll put him in detention, and they'll send a jailer every morning to bring him in so he can take a shower and a shave and have a nice breakfast and coffee up and meet his lawyer and go to court in a military or a police vehicle and appear in court. And, stuff like that, which Netanyahu doesn't want to see. First of all, once the evidence against him gets revealed publicly in court, his popularity is going to go down, 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 down. Yes, there was some sort of a victory in Gaza, but what kind of victory? They're still there and we're not. And then look at Lebanon. Yeah, there was something going on, but how good is it? It's not holding. And look what's going on in Syria. And these geniuses that take over Syria initially are not going to want to attack Israel. I don't know. Maybe they would immediately want to attack Israel. Because I don't know what's going to happen. But in the long run, they would be enemies of Israel. Maybe Iraq and Iran win. Maybe America just leaves them alone and says, this is stupid. Let's leave. And then they conquer Syria. And that could be Satan's plan. And then they build big military bases there and put aircraft and missiles and everything and start trying to decimate Israel. And then the two witnesses show up or something. I don't know what's going to happen. Prophecy tells us the end result, and we don't know how the trigger to get there. We don't always know the trigger, and we don't have defined details. That's the way prophecy typically works. Regarding America, it's still in Jeremiah 50:51 says they'll do evil in your sight. Let me read you the scriptures. That's America, daughter of Babylon. Unfulfilled, of course. Let me find the verse. It's giving me the wrong verses. Let me get more specific in my search. I'm having trouble finding this. It's probably in the next chapter. That's why. I'm gonna have to do it another way. I look it up. I don't want to read two chapters of Jeremiah. Let me try the search tool in eSword. Try the word evil, and I know the chapters, so it should work. Now I gotta go into Jeremiah. Here it is. Jeremiah 51:24. And I will render unto Babylon and all the inhabitants of Chaldea, that's America, all their evil that they have done in Zion in your sight, saith Jehovah. That could be from October 7th and other things, withholding weapons, manipulating us, and all this stuff. Or it could be new things, evil in your sight. So it could be it's already passed, it's happened, and it could be there'll be more bad stuff happening. I don't know. Can't tell from the passage, but this may not fall on Biden's head, it may fall on Trump's head. Trump's not going to agree with Ben-Gvir and Smotrich about reoccupying Gaza. I can't imagine that in my darkest dreams that Trump is going to say, yeah, let's get you to land back, you know. So Ben-Gvir and Smotrich may do it anyway. And I don't know what Trump will do. I have no idea. Trump is going to be so overwhelmed. And that's Biden, not Biden. Biden doing it, you know what I mean? Because that's that character's modus operandi to do stupid immature things like that. That's the way the idiot operates. Okay. Let's see what the chat's got, if I need to do anything there. I'm not talking about colonization, I'm talking about Bible prophecy, which I think you're ignorant of. So that's what I'm doing. Tell us about the emergency checkpoint. I don't know what you're talking about. See, I never knew I was too old for YouTube. Does YouTube have a policy if you're over a certain age you can't use it? Geniuses. Let's see what my notes have if I dropped anything out of there or forgot something. NATO would love to see Russia get very active in Syria, by the way, because it would weaken Russia and help them. It would run Russia's weapons supply, troops, and stuff like that. I don't think Putin's dumb enough to take the bait. He'll send aircraft and do bombings. That's about it. Biden could light everything up in the Middle East and then just pull everybody out and let Trump worry about it. He could do that. What's Trump going to do? Tell everybody in the media what he did? It doesn't matter. It's over with Biden. He's out. He's out. He's never going to be president again. I'll keep following this thing with the Israel detention for Netanyahu. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. It might. Got a prayer request here for TM, Tom Mike. TM, Tom Mike. Prayer request for healing from carpal tunnel syndrome for TM, Tom Mike, healing from carpal tunnel syndrome, and the husband of TM, Tom Mike, the husband, healing from diverticulitis, from healing from how do you pronounce diverticulitis? That's for TM's husband, the diverticulitis, and for TM healing from carpal tunnel. NE, Nancy Edward, N-E, Nancy Edward, N-E. Healing from cold type, food type symptoms, cold type symptoms for N-E, Nancy Edward. Prayer request for 3 people to have a closer walk with the Lord. For 3 people to have a closer walk with the Lord. C.M. Carol Martha. C.M. Carol Martha. R.S. Robert Sam. R.S. Robert Sam. And E.S. Edward Sam. E.S. Edward Sam. So for these 3 people, the prayer request is to have a closer walk with the Lord. For C.M., R.S., and E.S. Maybe doing it California style with the names of people is better. That's basically what's going on, and it's rather serious. Biden could light this up in Syria and then leave, letting Israel have a big mess, and let Trump inherit the mess, or just keep fanning the flames to the fire and letting Trump deal with it. Trump's got beaucoup trouble coming on his plate, big time. I think as we get closer to January 20th, Biden's going to light up the Asia Pacific to some extent. Probably just North Korea, but he's going to definitely hand Trump a handful over there. So there's a lot of things that are happening, but the troops from Iran and Iraq coming into Syria to suppress the rebels and help Bashar Assad is pretty much a granted. And that's got to cause escalation. Turkey, Israel, and America are probably going to kick against that. And there you have it. And what comes from there, we don't know. Iran soldiers in Syria and Iraq soldiers in Syria fighting America and Turkey, both in NATO and Israel, is going to probably cause attacks on Iraq and Iran. There you have it. Biden may try to get Yemen infuriated. I don't know. Maybe Biden's not going to try to light up the Asia Pacific theater. He may just say, okay, just leave it alone. No wake up sleeping dog, you know. When they make nasty remarks, I just block them and get rid of them. That's all. I'm just tired of that, you know. So that's what I got, and it may not look like a lot to you, but it is. And if you live in Europe or America or North America, you should understand that this has got an extremely strong possibility of affecting you directly in your homeland. Will Russia, China, and North Korea, and Venezuela, and Cuba, and Belarus, and other countries just sit back and let this go down? Or are they going to try to end it and help Bashar Assad? I don't know. It's too soon to tell. Definitely beyond the shadow of a doubt, the Iraqi parliament gave the president permission to enter Syria, and they have tens of thousands of Iraqi soldiers on the border with Syria for several days now. There's nothing false about that, and Iran definitely said they're going to send their soldiers into Syria, and I believe they're not going to have a big problem sending 20, 30, 40,000 soldiers. They'll probably do that too. And I think they'll join well, they'll get into the practice and they'll join the Iraqi troops. They'll probably come in together. And so please pray for me and my wife and pray for our peace, safety, protection, joy, and healing. Pray for my health, pray for my eyes, please, to keep improving, and keep praying for Chief. He's doing better and better. He's getting up steps pretty good. Pray he's able to go down the steps. He's afraid of it more than anything. So pray for that, please, Chief the dog, and pray for our rescues, the birds and the dogs, to be happy, healthy, and all. Pray for our finances. The PayPal thing, I tried with them, and they were rejecting the documentation I gave them, so I got to come up with other documentation and work on that. So it's still on the back burner. Don't use it right now. You can use GoFundMe if you want to, but if you can wait on the PayPal, I'm sure it'll resolve. So just wait. It's the best thing. And yeah, don't use the GoFundMe. Just wait. I don't think it'll take that long. I just gotta get some bills that have the information they want. It's annoying, you know. And pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for better videos. And I'll do updates on live streams and post them on Telegram as things get picked up. I have no idea when the Iraqi troops are going to come in. Probably by next week, I'm pretty sure by then at the latest. And I don't know what Iran's going to do. They're not going to be able to give the air cover. Russia isn't going to do it. So what are they going to do? I mean, I'm wondering. I'm wondering. Call America up on the phone and say, please don't kill our troops. We want to save Bashar Assad, and then when that's over with, destroy all your bases and kill your soldiers that we don't take hostage. No. Trump also is creating a hostage. He appointed a guy to be the hostage negotiator or something for the U.S. federal government. That's unprecedented. They never had a hostage negotiator before. Obviously, it's pointed at Hamas. So, shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach. I hope you got something out of it. It's kind of leaning secular right now, but it's a very unexpected event, what's going on in Syria, and it's very sudden and it's very meaningful. And we'll keep you posted as it goes. But remember, the chances of this going into a massive war beyond the Middle East is always there. Okay? If Russia, North Korea, and China decide to sit still and let Syria, Iraq, and Iran fall, there won't be a big war. And that is the position we see in prophecy. So it very likely could be the case. But on the other hand, we don't know. So probably they're going to fall. Iran, Syria, and Iraq, and Lebanon. And that's what I got, guys. So I'm out. Thank you.